Welcome to another episode of the ActivateCX Podcast, where we demystify and clarify the direction of CX. I'm Frank Rogers, your host, and I help brands grow with better CX, AI, and self-service. And today we are talking to CX Master Jill Raff as we dive into winning the CX battle with better culture and employee experience. Let's go. Okay, there are two sides to the CX brain. The left side is tech and process. The right side is people and culture. And our guest today brings frameworks, deep experience, insights into how you can bolster employee experience as a means to better customer experience. Let's welcome Jill Raff to the Activate CX program. Hey, Jill.
Hey, thanks for having me.
It's great to have you here. I love this topic. I feel like it's appropriate maybe just to jump right in. And I want to talk about people, process, and technology. And when I think about that, I think about the analogy of how people discuss what's important to them in their life. And so you'll hear somebody say, well, number one to me is faith, and number two is family, and then health, and then hobbies. And usually the last thing that they talk about is their job. But then when you flip the equation and you say, hey, where do you spend most of your time? They say, well, number one, my job. So everything kind of splits into reverse. It's pretty ironic. And when we discuss people, process, technology in the business world, we get a similar flow. We have a tendency to speak in terms of tackling the CX challenge with better technology, AI, self-service. We're going to rearrange process. We're going to create a different workflow and customer journey. People seems to be the last one that people talk about. And Jill, your focus is all about people. I mean, your focus is all about people, culture, team development, employee journey. It's the other side of the coin. And I love this perspective and I love this drive. And this has been your career, right? So please share maybe your story, your truth, and your perspective as we juxtapose people, process, and technology.
100%. Thank you. First of all, I just want to say I'm super stoked to see that finally the EX, the employee experience, is in the same sentence with the customer experience and in the same mindset, the flow, the understanding that the two are truly intrinsically connected. They are inseparable.
Completely.
I came to this, just quick synopsis. It's my foundation. It's my entire being. It's hardwired in my DNA because I had the fortune of having parents and grandparents who were entrepreneurs. They opened McDonald's store number 150 back in 1959 when the corporation was just 4 years in the founding. And so truly, I grew up in this company that was developing its culture, which is responsible, along with consistency and of course, all the other things that go along with a successful franchise. But I really now am able to look backwards and have that hindsight to recognize the importance of, and the reason for it becoming the number one global hamburger franchise is because of the people aspect, because of what I experienced growing up. And throughout all of my years of working in the business, hearing, my father, just today, ironically, I got a Facebook message from someone I didn't even remember from my childhood. And she talked about, and she talked about my dad and his involvement, but also with a photo of the very first McDonald's in Columbus, Georgia on Macon Road. And all their memories associated. So I get this all the time now. And that's the key. It's the memories that we create through the people interactions, through that experience with the company culture, that here we are decades and decades later, and people are still like rejoicing in those memories that they hold so near and dear. And that comes from the people interaction. It doesn't come from, they're not going to tell you about the technology, especially in those days, right? They're not talking about the process and those things, which of course have to happen. But what's created and burned into their visceral memory and bodily like reaction to those things are because of the experiences that they had.
Mm-hmm. And that connection.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, that's powerful. And the fact that you recall all this, I mean, and that time period from that origination story of McDonald's, there was no technology really to speak of. So it really was process, and it really was people, and it was the experience of people engaging with people and building brand from that. And we're so technologically focused. I mean, I'm happily involved with that. So that's the core of my business. But because I've done so much in terms of business transformation early in my career, it became very obvious to me the impact of a good culture, a bad culture, good leadership, bad leadership, the power of the esprit de corps that comes from a team that knows what their mission is. It seems to me that was part of your origination story.
Yes, completely a part of my origination story. And I have very vivid memories of going to the McDonald's conventions over the years, early years, seeing Ray Kroc there. But over time, like always loving as a kid to experience and taste all the new products that were being presented. And I will forever remember, I can still literally see the machine as technology developed of the fry machines with the baskets in a way to improve upon the speed and the accuracy of filling those baskets, of dropping into the oil. And here, I saw the progress from when I was a little girl. McDonald's used to make their French fries from scratch, from the potatoes. So one of my jobs as a little girl was to wash those potatoes. I can still picture those stainless steel, huge, kitchen sinks and the water filling it up and scrubbing them. And then I used to love to watch the fries go down the chute, from the red and white tile benches that were created a part of the original stores. Or when I was inside, seeing that lever that would push down, you put the potato in, and I was little, I would push with all my might, all my bodily weight, to push that lever down and watch the potato become French fries go down the chute. So to then later see this process of these baskets and this like line, the shiny silver baskets, and it would come around. But then I also remember very distinctly that one of the main things for quality of the product is long French fries. They don't want broken little pieces. And so I remember the discussion around these machines and how they would be filled to make sure that even now that they're going to a mechanical automated way of doing it, how to maintain that quality, how to make sure the fries don't get broken. It's like little stupid things like that, but they stuck with me,
Actually, in many respects, it's so not stupid. I have a very similar experience in my family's business. As my father, who was from England, had a British car repair shop, and how he would position the car for people to come and pick up the car, and how he would lay down a cover, on the fender, and the hood was up, and they would walk around the car, extolling the benefits of an open top experience. And everything about it was so curated and so perfect, but it was that kind of nuanced understanding of the details of that relationship that was powerful. You have that similar story. Is that where you started a path of saying, like, I want to be this proponent for the people inside the business and their relationship with the customer?
I didn't really think of it in that way. It was one of those things that evolved. When it's your own story, when it's your own experiences, I didn't think of it really in that way at all. And I've had multiple careers, multiple industries, across multiple countries and continents even. And it wasn't until I looked back that I was able to recognize that the common thread across, being fashion designer, food stylist, real estate agent, all these different things, the common thread that made so much sense was the people aspect and recognizing, that connection. So one of the things that I really love is Susan Pinker has a TED Talk where she talks about the number one indicator for longevity, long life, is human connection. And it's that conversation with someone at your coffee shop or your dry cleaner or your postal service, person. It doesn't matter, whatever it is, it's those human to human connections that actually touches on who we are as human beings. We all really crave that human connection, and therefore it does affect our longevity, which really was quite something when I heard that talk. And I think it just reinforces why this means so much to me, why I love it, and why I think it's so important, because we do crave that human connection. And I think more and more today, the more we've gone to technology, the presence of the AI world right now, whether it's kiosks or whatever it is, the lack of human interaction in businesses that provide speed and some other efficiencies, but you need more than that to have a thriving business that will allow you to scale, actually, by providing an experience. And we're seeing more and more with the advent of technology that businesses, in order to scale and thrive, they are looking for, where's the experience that we're offering our customers? Where's that experience that comes from a human to human interaction? So, I just think more and more that's going to show that the people piece shouldn't be the third tier of the process and technology trilogy, right? Like, I think we have to recognize that without the people, the process and the technology, you don't have anyone to do that process.
That's technology. Right. It's not a trilogy, it's a triumvirate. So I think that this might be a good segue, but also just to kind of cap that a little bit. I mean, you've got the kind of antithetical approach of companies like Zappos, who encouraged their customer representatives to engage in conversations that were far afield of the subject of shoes.
Right.
And so when you watch any type of documentary on that, it flies in the face again of first contact resolution in terms of, how much time, average action is taking. Like, it literally is antithetical. And so when we look at how EX leads to better CX, I mean, CX is somewhat of a big picture, almost a core topic. But like we expressed, we focus on technology platforms, process improvement. And even within that, we think of EX within the context of modules like quality management that generate coaching plans and data insights into the conversation. Again, very technology and data. And we also, within that same conversation, talk about elevating the agent to this high value agent position. But there's so much of the nuance there that's lost. For evolving EX, you need better culture. You need to develop those cohesive teams. They need to be able to speak with brand imperial. Like, can you expand on the topic of how you look at employee experience within an organization outside of these technological and process perspectives?
Sure. I think in some ways they're separate and distinct. And to me, they tie in. Of course, they have to tie in, but they tie in once you have the right employees working for you with the right core values, with aligned character and appreciation for what your brand is. And once you've gone through all the steps, which is a whole separate topic of what's needed, with first bringing in the right people in your team and then giving them what they need to make them the best, the most knowledgeable and the best prepared for what it is that they will be doing, how they will be delivering that service to your end customer for whatever they're buying, product or service. It's irrelevant. But the people aspect is always there. I mean, if you have a product, you need people to deliver that product or service for that matter. So when you ask about how does EX lead to better CX, I think, as I said before, they're intrinsically interconnected. Mm-hmm. And there's absolutely no way you can have outstanding customer experience without happy employees delivering that service or product, because we're all human. Yeah. We all, the reason Susan Pinker discovered that it's the leading indicator of long life is because we viscerally feel each other's emotions, each other's moods and feelings about, in this case, in a work environment, where they're working, how they, as an employee, you can tell right away if someone's disgruntled, if they don't want to be there, if they're just, clocking in and doing their duty, and if they're not fully committed and have ownership to that company about what they're doing, if they're not excited about what they're doing. And so if you've just hired people to do that, your customers are going to feel that. And with every business I know, you can find it elsewhere. There are competitors. So why would we do business in an environment where the employees are not happy to be there, where you feel this cold, like you're almost bothering them sometimes to ask for help, to find help. Oh my gosh, right? Like even to find help sometimes, or wait forever on a phone call and just be transferred. I mean, it's applicable to any industry, honestly. A quick short story. So I was going to the bank, must be right. Pretty dry, a bank experience, right? It's not
transactional.
It's transactional. But one of my taglines is that we need to transform transactions into interactions. And believe it or not, I have a bank story where that happened. What ordinarily should have been a transaction became an interaction. And I was going to the bank and it was downtown, so parking was an issue. I called them and said, which way should I enter? This and that. She led me through exactly bit by bit what to do. And she said where to go. And then she said, I'm going to stay on the phone with you until you get here to make sure that you know exactly where you are. Oh, and by the way, when you come in, be sure to take a ticket because I'm going to validate it for you so you don't have to pay for parking. So we did all this and she was lovely. I get off the elevator and there she is standing in front of me, greeting me at the elevator. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I'm like, I'm at a bank. So it was an investment, it was a financial institution, wasn't kind of your traditional bank, but why not, right? Like, this is my point. And part of what I bring, going off topic a tiny bit, but part of what I bring to the equation with my multi-industrial, multi-country experience, cultural experience, is that it's not normally done here, but why not, right? The normal bank environment, why not? It could be done anywhere. And so not only did she greet me, and then she gave me great service, then she walked me over to where the teller what I needed to do. And he was very friendly. And then she escorted me out and said, here's your ticket. Be sure to use this so you don't pay. I mean, I left there, Frank, when I left, I had this like kind of pep in my step. I had a smile on my face. And as I went back down the elevator, I was so acutely aware of my emotions that I was like, wow, what's going on? Why do I feel so good? And then all of a sudden I thought, it's because I just had this amazing interaction with another human being who was there to help me make my experience better as a customer. It was that simple.
I think if we had their logo right now, we could actually make a commercial for them that would be worth millions and millions. But I like everything that you're saying there. And one of the things that I know for myself personally, one of my superpowers is being able to see a lot of random moving items and make sense out of it and then create frameworks. And when I see other people that build frameworks, I immediately am attracted to them as humans because I see them taking the same approach. So Jill, I know that you are a frameworks person. Like when you go in and work with clients about the people element of the people, process, and technology, you not only have like this incredible intention and awareness, but you also have what I would call a way. How did that come about?
It really came about from, well, first of all, recognizing the problem, particularly attraction and retention of your staff. Granted, I should just also mention that it was heightened because of the pandemic. So this was something that I created before the pandemic. But if you're not including the employee experience in your process, in your operations, you are archaic, you are already irrelevant, you're not current. And so I always start at the beginning of anything related to my process is to reevaluate your core values, your vision, and your mission. And if you have not done this since 2019, if you're still working off these pre-pandemic values and processes, then you're on a short path to extinction, because people care about people, and you're not going to be able to bring in the right employees to be your advocates and your customer magnets if you are not focusing and prioritizing them, because ultimately people are people first and we're customers second. And I think that's really key to remember. So my process it came about really through my entire professional life, starting even when I was a child. Again, my exposure and foundation, I didn't realize until I'm old enough to reflect backwards and recognize the huge value of the foundation that I have from growing up in McDonald's franchise, and with my dad being an incredible mentor, and my mom as well. And so these things just really were glaring. They were just so obvious to me. And that's how I created what I call my E3+1 recipe. And that really is applicable to in any industry. It's truly industry agnostic.
I love how you recognize this 2019 marker, because since 2019, and obviously we all know what's happened, but it's harder to attract people. It's harder to keep people. People cost a lot more. And yet we're looking at things like, how do we improve lifetime customer value? And so this is a metric out there that dovetails with what are we getting in terms of retention on people, retention on customers. So long-term customer value or lifetime customer value is a key metric. We use it to define performance, and also to really drive targeting for marketing spend, right? Loyalty, rewards, specials, add-ons, part of that customer-facing group of people. It's a number, and thus we pull really hard from multiple data silos to develop actionable insights around it. So here we are in our left brain and we're crunching numbers and we're trying to understand it. But from a qualitative perspective, this number is influenced hugely by culture, consistent brand representation, again, employee experience. Can you pull back the curtains of the importance of affiliating lifetime customer value with the right approach towards people in the organization?
100%. Statistically, it's been proven that the cost for attracting new customers versus retaining an existing customer is huge. It's anywhere from up to 25 times the amount to bring in new customers
than to keep one. Right? Than
retaining your existing customers. And interestingly, it's been shown that 80% of future profits are more likely to come from 20% of existing customers. So why not continue to nurture your existing customers. And in the same way, so I see employees as your first line customer, your internal customer. So in the same way, why not invest in your current employees and educate them, engage with them, train them, give them what they need, because the retention of your employees is going to also exponentially reduce your costs, both for what you need for your employees and everything that's, follows the journey line for that. But it's going to also then impact your customer, because as we said at the top, right, how your employee feels affects your customers. And 73% of customers actually say that a friendly customer experience will make them fall in love with your brand. And when someone's fallen in love with your brand, you're creating brand loyalty. And of course, we know, brand loyalty, what that does, they're going to go out and give great reviews, which influence not only new customers, but also repeat customers. It's just, it's like dominoes, right? Like it just keeps going and going and going. The goodness keeps going. And also potentially the harm or the damage, right? What you bring in. So,
yeah, I was just going to say that, like, you hit like on the high notes of employee retention, customer retention, brand loyalty. But in the last 36 months, the impact of not a net promoter, but a net detractor, and the impact of people who leave brands on one bad experience, not to return for a minimum of 2 years, and that is the mark of how customers are sensitive to that experience. So if you are dealing directly with your people, and your people are those brand ambassadors, right? They may have tasks to perform, upgrade somebody, help them with a customer service problem. But if they're first and foremost incredibly aware of the brand, and like you mentioned before, the mission, they know exactly how to articulate the value proposition to that customer and ensure that they feel that experience. Because you've mentioned feel a few times. When people do, they get onto a call, they usually get into a call because they have a problem. They're already rankled, and nobody has any time whatsoever in a day to deal with problems. And so they compound that misery. And so one bad experience can send a person off the edge. And because they have the ability to search for who the next competitor is, they can immediately get into a conversation with somebody, not to talk about a problem, but to talk about new business. And how happy is that other company to talk about new business? It's going to be a good experience.
Right, exactly. And, Frank, you find C-suite always talking about their bottom line. Well, bottom line is that your customer retention is the most important thing. Your 5% increase, for example, just 5% in your customer retention actually increases profitability by 75%. Bain & Company showed that. And so the bottom line is your people ultimately. And, you talk about people complaining, being disgruntled and unhappy, a large percentage, 78%, will actually bail on a transaction after having a bad experience. And you're really lucky as a company if someone complains, because the truth is that 96% of people will just take their business elsewhere. They're just going to walk. It's like, I've already wasted so much time. I cannot tell you, I get a visceral reaction. I'm like almost sick when I have to call in for a problem, because it takes hours out of my day, and and nobody's empowered to do anything about it. It's just, and then you get disconnected, or you get sent someone else, and the man, and then I've learned to ask for the supervisor pretty quickly, and they're always busy. So they'll call you back. No one ever calls you back. I mean, that doesn't produce brand loyalty. But going back to this really important 96% number, breaking that down, think about it. Out of 100 people, you have only 4 people who are going to take the time to let you know where you can improve on your business. 4
Small
out of
sample.
100. That's mind-boggling, right? And look how easy it is to flip that number instead. If you just show them that you care and give them opportunities to reach you and to really listen and show that you authentically want to provide good service. That's why you're in business. You're not there to make them miserable and go to your competitor. So, gosh, I so agree with what you're saying. And just, I think people lose sight of how important that is, that to maintain lifetime customer value, lifetime employee value. Again, the two are connected, and you have to first really think of how do we take care of our internal customer so that they're taking care of our external end customer.
So one of the things that I really like about your framework is you introduce some terminology that is not as common as maybe it should be. And one of the things is customer journey is by far and away a hot topic. Employee journey, I don't hear that very often. Not in terms of an initiative in and of itself. So customer journey, customer mapping is big. I have a preference for customer stories as a means of getting to understanding the process changes and the technology changes and where people interact, both, from an actor's perspective, both from a customer and an employee. But the focus on improving the journey for the customer is removing friction, personalizing experience, introducing simplicity, all with this kind of monomaniacal focus on improving conversion, amplifying engagement, getting better data insights. But you have a different focus on the employee journey. You've already made, I think, very much a solid case for how one needs to have a different perspective on this and how it affects CX. How do you approach defining, documenting, activating employee journey?
So I believe, first of all, I'm so happy to hear employee journey and that there's some focus on that.
That's awesome.
And hopefully there'll be more and more of that. I believe that as a team, that people are not a team just because they work together. They're a team because they respect, they trust, and they care for each other. They have each other's backs. And that's something that I heard. Also, I've been interviewing people who worked for my dad starting when they were 17. And we're talking decades ago. And that was something that he said to me that really hit me. He said, we knew your dad had our back and we had his back. We worked collectively as a team, and he was there to support us with whatever we needed. He said, you just tell me what you need. I will support you in any way I can. I'm going to teach you everything I know for you to improve. And so this was a part, when you think about the employee journey, this was a very important core value, a philosophy towards your employee's journey, for them to know along the way that you have their back and that each other has their back. And so I really believe that this E3+1 recipe that I created is a solution to the cost, labor churn. It's just that speaking food wise, churning, we think of butter, right? So are we making butter or are we making a business? We want to minimize the cost of that turnover. And so this roadmap that I created to become the employer of choice came about because I think the first step is, once you've reestablished or reclarified your core values, vision, and mission, once you've made sure that the employee experience is integrated and is an integral part of that, so that you can apply it throughout your operations and your processes, no matter what that is. And so the first step, just very briefly to highlight the roadmap, which ultimately simultaneously increases and improves your attraction and retention on both sides of your people side of the business. So the first E is educate. Mm-hmm. So don't train your people. People are like, what do you mean don't train? Of course we have to train our people. Yes, but before you spend the time, the money, the resources in training them on the task training, the skill training to perform that job, the functional training, before you do that, you have to first educate them on who you are, what the company is about. What service or product are you delivering? How do you want that delivered to your customer? What does your brand mean? What is your brand promise? How do people feel that brand promise? How do they experience what that is? So these are things that have to be done from an educational perspective, not just a skill set or functional training. Mm-hmm. That's the nutshell of what education is.
I would imagine that in this particular process, Joe, like there's a lot of engagement that you have with executives in those businesses to really tease out what things are truth and what things are spoken. There's a great Buddhist phrase that says something to this order. It says, be careful what you think, because what you think will impact what you say, and be careful what you say, because that will impact what you do. And be careful what you do, because that will tell people who you really are. And so when you're talking to a group of people to go through a process of education that sets an expectation of who we are, it's incumbent upon the leadership to really be walking that path. People are looking at their leadership and saying, is that something that they truly live out inside of the business with customers, with ourselves internally? What do they say to customers? And then what do they say to us about customers? These are single moments of truth inside of an organization. And I would imagine for you, Jill, as a consultant going in, your antennae are probably on max awareness when you're going through this process of education. Am I right?
100%. And as I mentioned before, it's really my DNA. So whenever I go into a business or a meeting and I'm speaking with someone, I'm hearing what they're doing, I also like to experience as a customer their business and what's going on. And I just naturally, because of what I've grown up with, because of all the experiences, I observe, and I'm very detail oriented, and that's been hyper honed with my fashion design and my food styling, my other things. But I naturally I hear, I see, I use all my senses. I feel, I can pick up on so many details going on around me. Sometimes it makes my family or people with me like a little annoyed.
It's a lot of information.
I pick it all up and I like, I want to comment on it. But when I am helping a company, it is very important to really make sure they are walking the walk and to see what they're doing, what's worked, what hasn't worked. And in the same way, I can't help it, but I keep, I think of employee experience first. But as you mentioned, with the customer, and they want to feel and see that your brand leadership is congruent with what they've been told your brand is supposed to be about. Well, think about from the employee side of the equation. How are they going to feel if they're being told, as you said, this is the way you should be treating your customer. This is the way you view your interactions with them, your promises, etc. And they themselves are being treated poorly. And they're not, the leadership is not using the exact same, highlighted processes and details on how to pamper and kind of kid glove and help your customer. If they're not having that same experience, they're going to feel like, well, this is totally incongruent. They want me to do that, but they're treating me like this. Like, forget it. That's just not going to wash, and that's not going to sustain, and it's certainly not going to be a scalable, thriving solution or method.
So with your framework, does it result in, I mean, I can only imagine there's a lot of documentation of particular customer facing roles and like what that journey needs to be, not only just to drive the KPIs that the business really wants to have and should have, but the experience that the customers have. Is this part of the output that you have from your consultation?
Yes. So the second E is engage. And that's all about, what does it look like? So how do we take this education and then put it into action? And that's, looking at, again, I would never come into a company and say, this is the way you do it. And that's part of the reason why I call it a recipe, besides my food background. With any recipe, you have the basic ingredients, you have the basic methodology, the steps, right? But to make it uniquely yours and give it your flavor, and in this way, it would be, what is the unique brand promise of your company? What's the flavor you want your culture to be, so that your customers are feeling you different from the other competitor who's delivering the same service or product, right? So taking that recipe, imparting your own flavor into those things, and engaging with your people first, shoulder to shoulder, like you mentioned before, right? Like, you have to be there willing to do everything. Like the ex-employee, told me from my dad's experience, don't expect them to do something you as a leader is not willing to do yourself. And so getting in there, engaging with them and showing them the way of how to engage with their end customer. And so when I work with people, I look at what they're doing already. And from an outside perspective, with having this kind of multicultural, multi-dimensional perspective, I'm able to say, okay, let's look at what's working, where are we getting the best feedback, what might not work, and what might be happening in another industry that I've experienced that could really work well for what's happening in your environment already. Because I think it's people get very myopic. The tunnel vision is based on this tunnel of what has always been done in our industry, what's always been done in our company. And we need to think outside the box. If nothing else, design school taught me how to think outside the box, how to look at a problem from a different angle to come up with a solution.
I see that your design methodology is adaptive. And so you can judge the recipe and have a different flavor profile, but it's still going to taste good.
Exactly. I love that. Yes, 100%. And at the end of the day, just to, I guess, finalize the recipe for all the some people won't wonder, well, what are those other E's? The third E is entrust. So again, you can't just start with entrusting your people. You have to, that's why it's a process. That's why you have to start with educating, starting with your core values, vision, and mission, but starting with educating, then engaging with, and then once you've done all of these steps and things involved in those two first E's, you are free to entrust your people without you micromanaging, without you being there, to follow through and have ownership for their job, for their company, not saying it just as a job, but true ownership as their voice in a company, that they feel empowered to make decisions on their own for the betterment of the company. And what better way to then also relieve upper management or an owner of a company, depending upon the type of business you're in, to free you to then, I was going to say, go working on your company, not in your company. Is so many, I've heard from so many people now since the pandemic. They are like, I don't have time, where I have to be in the company because of what's happening with the labor shortage. But this will resolve some of that labor shortage. You will become the employer of choice by creating this culture that attracts people to you. And not only can you be working on your business, not in your business, how about the concept of actually taking time to live and be with your family, take vacations, like just gain your life back. So, I mean,
that's culture.
The benefits are across the board and enormous. Yeah, they're priceless.
So as you talk about this leadership and you talk about executives inside of a business, they are increasingly becoming operators. Like you said, they're working in their business and not on their business. It could be the VP of customer support. It could be a COO, a CRO. They've got daily, weekly, monthly tasks that often take precedent or priority. There's a downward pressure, right, to perform. I got to hit numbers. I've got problems I need to take care of. We know that those 5% of the problems take 80% of your time away. For you, you're working in this business to affect change. It's not a light switch. It's a change that has to formulate and become part of the movement of that organization on the daily. So how, as a consultant, like, do you ensure that business leaders are working towards like these culture and employee experience initiatives while they're addressing all the things that are coming at them from left, right, and otherwise? How do you negotiate that process? Because it seems evident to me the value of having somebody that is not being pulled away in these areas to be present and engaged and focused on this task. How do you move through that organization?
Yeah, you raise an outstanding point. Besides just having another person there to be focused solely on the improved employee experience so that you can have the improved customer experience. It's why my trademark is literally EX to CX. But the advantage of bringing in someone from outside of your business to do this is you have a fresh eyes and ears approach to this tunnel vision. So, you know, your vision is set this way, but sometimes we can't see the forest for the trees, right? Like, you're so ingrained in what's going on and putting out the fires or keeping up with the numbers and all of those things. It's just too much. And so
it's myopic.
It is myopic. And sadly, it's the first thing forgotten. I'm not sure why, but I guess it's the easiest thing, right? Because it's not usually documented. One of the things that is proprietary to me is, and my process is helping companies come up with an educational manual, not just a training manual, you know, touching back on that E. Actually, I think maybe this is a good time to also mention that +1 E in the recipe, and that's empathy. And so I think as someone coming in from the outside, they're able to have a clear picture of the whole operation of what's going on, but also able to touch on the EQ, the emotional quotient, the human aspect that is so crucial today, particularly post-pandemic, where the people side of the business is important, and employees no longer willing to just work for a paycheck, no longer willing to just be there and do task-driven jobs. They're even willing to take a pay cut where money, you know, is usually the first thing thrown at someone. And I've had clients say to me, Jill, I don't know what to do. I just keep throwing money at them. I'm like, okay, but let's back up. Have you applied some of the things that we've talked about and learned about? I have a hybrid course where it's coaching and this course, which has, you know, teaching content and videos and resources together with things that you can apply immediately in your business, as well as planning for the long term. And so as we were talking about this, she keeps saying you're throwing money. And then she's like, oh yeah, okay, I know. I have to go back and I just need the time, right? She keeps saying I need the time to integrate these topics into my business. And so I think that's where there's such a strong advantage, besides being able to have an outside view and truly a fresh ears hearing what's going on without a biased point of view, and, you know, eyes to see what's happening, bringing in an outside view, bringing in other suggestions, as mentioned, from other industries, but also really helping to bring in that human component. And so these other things with the recipe, the empathy piece is so huge. It's like, again, to bring in a food or a cooking analogy, when we cook, we use salt as a seasoning, and it highlights, it brings out the flavors of the other main ingredients. And so the key is looking at those other ingredients for what you do and being consistent with those things. But the empathy is something that's sprinkled in and that's used across everything else to highlight and bring forward the best of what those things are. And without empathy, it doesn't matter what your other ingredients are. It doesn't matter what your process is. It doesn't matter what tech you've included and how sexy and it might be and trendy and on point. None of that will matter unless you have the human element of empathy. And so I think that's really showing the human element, the recognizing your people asset is essential in no matter what you do. And sometimes it means being open enough, letting the ego be parked outside and bringing in someone who can really tell you what they see, what they hear, having experience, offering other ideas, and being willing. Frank, I think this is key. Being willing and open to hear the truth. So I am someone who I'm not a yes person. I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear. I'm there to make a difference and to make a change, and take it or leave it. That's fine. But I'm going to be honest with what I see. And I love having, as you can tell, probably, I love this conversation. I love this topic. And I'm a people person. I'm a team player as much as a leader. My personality profile said, and I'm like, yes, they got me, because I love that exchange. Both in my past with my food styling, my fashion design, I was always a part of a creative team. And honestly, that's what lights me up. And being able to problem solve and brainstorm is where I shine. That's what excites me, and that's where I feel like I can make the most difference. And I just hope that company leaders are willing and open to hear the reality of possibly another way, and a way, and it doesn't mean a complete change. It means just a small shift in your vision and being able to incorporate something that's so important and foundational and should always have been incorporated, but we know now since the pandemic must be incorporated, and that truly is your employee experience.
Man, it's incredible how, like, when you attach that empathy component to it, and in your role as a trusted advisor, how that leads to a better level of discernment, and that higher level thinking in the discernment engine creates a more thoughtful outcome. And that thoughtful outcome, I believe, is really what you're getting at in turn, because that's going to be what people see and know you as. This is a powerful role that you play with inside the organization, one that you typically don't see. Human resources does not fill that role. That's not the role and the mission of an HR team. That's really what you're talking about, is many times left up to the command and control structure inside the business. That's where we can have radically different experiences for people across related organizations, CMO relating to the CRO, relating to the chief operating officer that has a mission working with the VP of customer experience, and brand and everything else is represented differently across it. So like the value as a trusted advisor to come in and map out employee journey and to map out culture is huge. Jill, I just want to thank you for sharing your mission today, for being on the show, and for, I think, bringing forward an enormous amount of wisdom. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm always thrilled to talk about this topic, and thanks for highlighting it and really showing the importance of it for the end goal of a great customer experience.
Thank you. I see immense value. There you have it, Jill Raff on full display. employee experience goes well beyond having quality management application, data insights, coaching applications. Those are all good things. Like, trust me, those are important. Those are foundational. But it also takes having an employee journey to align with your customer journey, a dialed in culture, 100%, and frameworks for ensuring your business is addressing this critical perspective. These qualitative measures, not quantitative measures, but qualitative follow-up, is going to bolster your bottom line and improve your business sustainability, and maybe just make a happier working environment to boot. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. Please remember to like and subscribe down below. And remember this, if you want to be successful, let's go get it.